You have felt it before. The draining presence of someone who seems to take more than they give, leaving you empty, restless, unsettled. Their words may not be cruel, but their energy leaves a mark. Their silence may not be hostile, yet it feels heavy, suffocating, impossible to ignore, and you wonder, why does this affect me so much? Why can one person's presence collapse my inner stability? This is the question that has haunted humanity for centuries. How do you stop others from harvesting your energy, from controlling your emotions, from pulling you into their shadow? Carl Jung, the great depth psychologist, would say the answer is not outside of you. The answer lies within the shadowed corridors of your own mind. What affects you is not merely the other person's behavior, but the unrecognized parts of yourself they awaken. You are not destabilized by their noise, but by your silence within. You are not weakened by their power, but by the parts of you that have never claimed your own. And this is where we begin, with the shocking realization that nobody can steal your energy unless you hand them the key to it. Think of the moments in life when someone's opinion cut you deeply, when rejection shook you to the core, when manipulation left you questioning your worth. These moments reveal something hidden. Your energy was not taken by force. It was given, unconsciously, through the openings in your psyche you never dared to seal. Jung called these openings the shadow, the unconscious wounds, desires and fears we refuse to acknowledge. When you encounter someone who provokes you, drains you, enrages you, you are in fact encountering a mirror. Their shadow touches yours, and the exchange of energy begins. This is why one person's silence can collapse you, while another's cruelty barely leaves a scratch. The difference lies not in them, but in you. Jung warned that what remains unconscious controls your life, and you call it fate. The people who seem to disturb your peace, who hijack your emotions, who pull you into despair, are often the ones who touch an unexamined wound. Their criticism awakens your hidden insecurity. Their arrogance ignites your unspoken resentment. Their coldness revives your fear of abandonment. What steals your energy is not their presence, but the invisible contract between your shadow and theirs. If you understand this, you begin to reclaim your strength. Imagine your psyche as a house with many rooms. Some rooms are filled with light, order, and clarity. These are the parts of you you proudly show to the world: kindness, intelligence, confidence. But there are other rooms, locked and dusty, filled with the fragments you rejected: your anger, your envy, your selfishness, your desires you judged as unworthy. Jung called this hidden collection the shadow. When others walk into your life, they do not enter only the rooms you choose to display. They wander into the locked ones, the forbidden chambers, and they press against the doors. If you have never dared to open them yourself, you panic, you feel violated, you feel drained. But in truth, you are only facing your own forgotten rooms. This is why Jung insisted that individuation, the lifelong process of becoming whole, requires confronting the shadow. To know your own darkness is to become unshakable in the face of others. Because once you have walked through your own abyss, nobody else can throw you into it. Once you have faced your own selfishness, you are immune to manipulation that exploits your need to be good. Once you have acknowledged your anger, you are no longer paralyzed by those who provoke it. To see your shadow is to reclaim your energy. Now ask yourself, how many times have you been exhausted, not because of what happened, but because of what you told yourself it meant? Someone ignores your message, and you spiral into feelings of worthlessness. Someone raises their voice, and you crumble under the weight of imagined rejection. Someone shines brighter, and you shrink, convinced of your inadequacy. Here lies the trap. Your energy is drained, not by reality, but by the unconscious narratives you project onto it. Jung called this projection, the act of attributing to others what you cannot accept in yourself. The critic you despise might reflect your own self-criticism. The manipulator you fear might mirror your own hidden desire for control. The arrogant one who irritates you might echo your repressed ambition. Every projection is a leak in your energy, a cord through which you unconsciously give yourself away. If you want to protect your energy permanently, you must stop outsourcing your shadow to others. You must own it. This is not a comfortable process. It is not a motivational slogan. It is a confrontation with the parts of you you have spent your life denying. But Jung would say it is the only path to freedom. Because as long as your shadow remains in the dark, you will forever be vulnerable to those who embody it for you. The narcissist drains you because you have not owned your own capacity for self-assertion. The manipulator drains you because you have not faced your own hunger for influence. The critic drains you because you have not integrated your own inner judge. They harvest your energy only because you outsource your shadow to them. And here is where the true power lies. Once you own your shadow, you are no longer drained. You become whole. You become someone who can walk through noise in silence, through hostility in peace, through chaos with unshakable energy. Jung's psychology is not about avoiding darkness, but about integrating it. Light without shadow is an illusion. To be free is not to escape others, but to stand in their presence without losing yourself. Take a moment now and think of the last time someone disturbed your energy. Feel the weight of their words, the sting of their indifference, the heaviness of their presence. Then ask yourself, what part of me did they awaken? Was it my fear of being unworthy? Was it my need to always be liked? Was it my denial of my own anger? If you can answer this honestly, you have already reclaimed the energy, because awareness breaks the contract. The moment you see the projection, the moment you name the shadow, the leak is sealed. They no longer have power, because the power has returned to you. This is the no BS guide Jung would give. Stop blaming others for stealing your energy. They can only take what you do not own. They can only touch the wounds you refuse to face. They can only control the shadows you deny. And once you face them, you are untouchable. Let us go deeper. Think of energy not as some mystical force, but as attention, focus, life force. Whoever controls your attention controls your energy. The manipulative friend, the critical parent, the arrogant colleague. They all harvest your attention. They pull your focus toward the wound, the insecurity, the shadow, and you give your energy willingly, even if unconsciously. Jung would say the task is not to resist them, but to integrate the parts of yourself that respond, because resistance alone is fragile. You may fight them today, but tomorrow another will appear, and the cycle repeats. Integration, however, is eternal. Once you face your shadow, no one else can weaponize it against you. This is why Jung placed so much importance on the process of individuation, the lifelong journey of becoming who you truly are, beyond masks, beyond projections, beyond unconscious contracts. The individuated person is not perfect, but whole. They have made peace with their contradictions. They can be kind without being weak, assertive without being cruel, silent without being passive, and because they are whole, they are unshakable. They no longer leak energy in every interaction because they know where their boundaries lie. They no longer confuse rejection with worthlessness because they know their own value. They no longer collapse under manipulation because they have confronted their own hunger for control. At this point, you might be wondering, how do I begin? How do I reclaim my energy in the face of those who drain me? Jung would tell you, begin with awareness. Begin by noticing when your emotions spike. The next time someone irritates you, instead of collapsing, pause. Ask, what shadow are they awakening in me? The answer will not always be comfortable, but it will always be liberating. And with each answer, you will stitch back the torn fabric of your energy. Here is the truth. You cannot stop people from being who they are. The world will always have critics, manipulators, narcissists, and thieves of attention, but you can stop them from stealing your life force. You can stop outsourcing your shadow to them. You can stop leaking your energy into the abyss of unconsciousness. And when you do, you will stand as someone unshakable, radiant, whole. This is not theory, it is practice. Every time you journal your emotions, you bring light to your shadow. Every time you say no when you mean no, you reclaim your power. Every time you embrace silence instead of rushing to please, you build an unshakable core. These are not grand gestures. They are small acts of individuation, and with each act, you fortify the walls of your inner house. Remember this, your energy is yours. It cannot be stolen unless you abandon it. It cannot be destroyed unless you deny it. And it cannot be harvested unless you leave your shadow unattended. Jung's wisdom was clear. Freedom is not the absence of darkness, but the courage to face it. When you know your shadow, you no longer fear the shadows of others. When you own your energy, nobody can harvest it. And when you stand in your own wholeness, you become unshakable, untouchable, unforgettable. Now pause, take a deep breath, and ask yourself, are you ready to see your shadow, to reclaim your energy, to stop letting others live at your expense? If so, write it in the comments. I choose awareness. And if you want to continue this journey, subscribe now, because we are only at the beginning. The next chapters will take you deeper into the very heart of Jung's map of the soul, where true freedom begins. When you step into the world, you do not walk as a naked soul. You carry a mask, a carefully crafted face built not only by your choices, but by the demands of society, your family, your culture, and your fears. Carl Jung called this mask the persona. It is the social face, the version of you that gains acceptance, avoids rejection, and functions within the rules of the collective. The persona is not evil. It is necessary. Without it, you could not navigate society. You would be too raw, too exposed, too vulnerable. Yet the danger comes when you mistake the mask for your true self. Because the moment you begin to live for the mask rather than through it, your energy begins to leak. You no longer live from your core, but from a performance. And the longer you perform, the more exhausted you become. Think of the times when you said yes but wanted to say no, when you smiled while anger boiled within, when you agreed only to avoid conflict, when you hid your intelligence to avoid envy, when you silenced your needs to be liked. Each of these moments was a transaction where you traded authenticity for acceptance, truth for safety, soul for survival. And every trade cost you energy, because to maintain the mask requires constant effort, an effort to suppress, to edit, to mold, to conceal. The persona demands fuel, and the fuel it consumes is your life force. Jung insisted that what tires us most is not what we do, but what we pretend to be. This is why some people exhaust you without even speaking, because their entire being is a performance, and your psyche feels the weight of their falseness. And it is also why you exhaust yourself day after day, when you live as an actor in your own life. Every smile that hides pain, every silence that hides rage, every compliment that hides resentment drains your core. You wake up tired, not because life is inherently draining, but because living as a mask is the most expensive energy expenditure a human being can endure. But why do we do it? Why do we sacrifice our authenticity at the altar of appearances? Because somewhere deep within, we believe that our truth is not enough. We believe that if the world saw our anger, our flaws, our fears, we would be unloved, unwanted, cast aside. This is the secret pact of the persona. I will hide my shadow, and in return, the world will accept me. Yet Jung showed us the tragic paradox. The very parts we hide are the ones that hold our vitality. The shadow is not only darkness, it is also energy. Your anger, once integrated, becomes strength. Your envy, once faced, becomes ambition. Your fear, once acknowledged, becomes awareness. To exile them is to exile your own power. And here lies the trap. When you exile your shadow, others will carry it for you. You will project it onto them, giving them the role of villain, manipulator, critic, enemy. They will appear as thieves of your energy, when in truth they are carrying the fragments of you that you refuse to face. This is why Jung said the shadow, when unintegrated, appears first in the outside world. You think they are draining you, but it is you who abandoned your power. Imagine this. You're in a room full of people. You smile, you nod, you conform, but inside you feel the fatigue creeping in. You sense that you are invisible, unseen, even when others compliment you. Why? Because they are not meeting you. They are meeting your mask. They admire your persona, not your soul, and you know it. This is why praise often feels hollow, why acceptance feels temporary, why belonging feels fragile. Because as long as your persona is loved, your soul remains untouched, unfed, unrecognized. And nothing drains more energy than being unseen in plain sight. Now imagine a different scenario. You remove the mask, little by little. You speak your truth, even when your voice trembles. You set a boundary, even when others frown. You show your imperfection, even when it feels dangerous. Suddenly, something shifts. Some people leave, some criticize, some distance themselves. But you feel lighter. You feel alive because the mask no longer drains you. Your energy returns to you, and those who remain for who you truly are. This is the turning point Jung called individuation, the process of integrating the mask and the shadow into a whole self. Not discarding the persona entirely, for it is useful, but refusing to mistake it for your essence. Jung warned that the greatest tragedy is to become identical with the persona, to live as a role, as a title, as an image, while the soul rots in the basement. Many people die never having met themselves, only having played the part written for them by others. They were the dutiful son, the pleasing daughter, the loyal employee, the admired leader. But inside, they were strangers to themselves. And when death comes, the mask falls, revealing an empty shell that never lived. This is why Jung's psychology is not mere theory. It is life and death. To integrate your shadow, to balance your persona, is to reclaim your energy and truly live. So how does this relate to protecting your energy from others? In every way. Because the more you live as a mask, the more you depend on others to sustain it. You depend on their approval, their recognition, their praise, and this dependence is the very cord through which your energy flows outward. Criticism collapses you, rejection destroys you, indifference kills you, because the mask needs constant feeding. But when you begin to live from your core, when you no longer confuse your mask with your essence, their opinions lose power. You stop being their puppet. You stop leaking energy into the abyss of appearances. Think of the last time someone criticized you. If you were living from your persona, their words pierced you like a knife because they threatened the mask you built. But if you were living from your integrated self, their words bounced off, not because you are arrogant, but because your worth no longer depends on the mask. You know your shadow, you know your light, and nothing they say can alter it. This is freedom. This is protection. Not by building walls, not by escaping people, but by no longer depending on them for energy. And here lies a hard truth. Some people in your life only know your mask. They have never met your soul. They may never accept your truth because it threatens their own masks. When you begin to reclaim your energy, some relationships will collapse. And this collapse is not a loss, but a liberation. Jung said that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And part of that privilege is releasing those who only loved the mask. Let us go deeper. The persona is not only individual, it is collective. Society itself has a mask. It tells you what to value, what to fear, what to chase. It tells you success is louder than silence. Wealth is worth more than peace. Appearance is more important than authenticity. And when you internalize society's persona, you become a slave to its demands. You run endlessly, exhausted, drained, not because life requires it, but because the mask does. And again, your energy is harvested, not by one person, but by an entire system built on unconscious compliance. Jung's rebellion was subtle but radical. True freedom is inner sovereignty. To individuate is to no longer be possessed by the collective mask. To live not as a role written by society, but as a whole human being. This does not mean you abandon all masks, but that you wear them consciously. You use the persona as a tool, not as an identity. And when you live this way, nobody, not a critic, not a manipulator, not society itself, can drain your energy, because you have stopped outsourcing your worth. This is why protecting your energy is not about cutting everyone off, escaping the world, or hiding in silence. It is about integration. When you know your shadow, you are immune to projection. When you know your persona, you are immune to performance. When you know yourself, you are immune to harvest. This is Jung's map, and it is not easy, but it is the only one that leads to unshakable freedom. So ask yourself now, where in your life are you performing? Where are you hiding? Where are you leaking energy into the maintenance of a mask that no longer serves you? Write it down, confront it. This is not weakness, this is strength. Because the day you meet yourself fully is the day nothing and nobody can affect you again. And as we continue, we will go even deeper, into the heart of projection itself, where the most insidious forms of energy theft occur, not through words, not through masks, but through the invisible dance between your unconscious and theirs. Once you see this, you will never fall into the trap again. There is a strange phenomenon that happens in every human interaction, invisible yet powerful, silent yet consuming. You meet someone new, and almost instantly you feel something about them. Admiration, irritation, attraction, suspicion. Sometimes they have done nothing to justify it, yet you feel it as truth. You say, I don't trust him, or she seems arrogant, or he feels so inspiring. Carl Jung warned us to be cautious with such immediate certainties, because often what we perceive in others is not them at all, but our own unconscious reflected back to us. This is the law of projection. Projection is the mind's oldest trick. What you refuse to face in yourself, you see in another. What you repress, you assign. What you exile, you meet as an enemy or an idol. This is why Jung called projection the most dangerous psychic process, because as long as you live unconscious of it, your energy is not yours. It flows outwards into fantasies, fears, judgments, obsessions, attachments. Every projection is a leak in your soul, an invisible pipe through which your vitality drains into someone else's image. Think of the person you cannot stop resenting. Their arrogance burns you, their selfishness disgusts you, their confidence feels unbearable. They may indeed carry these traits, but the reason they destabilize you so deeply is because those same traits exist within you, denied, exiled, hidden in your shadow. Your resentment is a form of recognition. Your energy is drained not because of who they are, but because of who you refuse to be. You reject arrogance, yet inside you reject your own assertiveness. You despise selfishness, yet inside you fear embracing your own needs. You envy confidence, yet inside you repress your own right to shine. And so you project, and every projection steals your power. Jung explained it simply. The things that irritate us in others tell us more about ourselves than about them. The critic you cannot tolerate reflects your own inner critic. The manipulator you fear reflects your own hidden urge to control. The cold one you chase reflects your own denial of warmth. Every time you project, you split yourself, and the energy required to maintain the split is immense. This is why some people leave you exhausted without touching you. You are not fighting them. You are fighting yourself through them. Now imagine the opposite. Think of the people you idolize, the ones you place on pedestals, the ones you call extraordinary, godlike, rare. Jung said this too is projection, the positive shadow. The light you see in them is the light you refuse to see in yourself. You admire their courage because you exile your own. You worship their wisdom because you deny your own. You crave their beauty because you reject your own reflection. And every time you idolize, your energy flows outward, feeding them, draining you. You live hungry because you refuse to eat from your own table. This is why Jung insisted that projection is the root of energy loss, because whether you project shadow or light, you disown yourself, and disowning yourself is the most expensive act a human can perform. You live drained, not because others are vampires, but because you volunteer your life force through unconscious contracts. But what about the real vampires, you ask? What about those who manipulate intentionally? Who feed on your emotions, who twist your kindness into their nourishment? Jung would say, yes, they exist. There are people who thrive on drama, who feel alive only when others are destabilized, who cannot survive without conflict. But even then, they only succeed when you participate in the projection. They can only feed on what you offer unconsciously. The manipulator succeeds because you refuse to face your fear of confrontation. The narcissist thrives because you deny your own right to matter. The emotional vampire drains you because you outsource your boundaries to them. They cannot drink from a well that is sealed. They can only drink from the wounds you leave open. Let us be brutally honest here. How many times have you stayed in conversations that drained you simply because you feared being rude? How many times have you absorbed someone else's emotions as your responsibility simply because you wanted to be good? How many times have you sacrificed your peace to fix what was never yours to fix? Every one of those choices was not theft, but surrender. You surrendered your energy to the projection that you must always be liked, that you must always be responsible, that you must always be kind. The vampire did not steal it. You handed it over. This is the part nobody wants to hear, but Jung insisted on it. Your energy is harvested only because you unconsciously consent. And the moment you see the projection, the moment you name the contract, it collapses. Awareness ends the feeding. This is why integration is liberation. Once you own your shadow and your light, projection ends. You no longer need to demonize or idolize. People become people again, not mirrors of your unconscious. And with that, the cords of energy theft fall away. Think of the peace of such a state. You walk into a room and nobody triggers you. You hear criticism and it does not collapse you. You meet arrogance and it does not destabilize you. You see beauty and you admire without envy because you know all these things in yourself. You have faced them, integrated them, owned them, and what you own cannot be stolen. What you embrace cannot be harvested. Jung compared the unconscious to a great underground reservoir. Most people live at its mercy, projecting its contents onto everyone they meet, draining themselves endlessly. But the individuated person taps the reservoir directly. They drink from their own depths. They stop projecting and start integrating, and in that moment they become inexhaustible. Their energy is no longer subject to the weather of other people. It flows from within, unshakable, permanent. Here is a practice. The next time someone drains you, do not ask, why are they like this? Ask, what part of me are they showing me? If you feel manipulated, ask where you manipulate yourself. If you feel rejected, ask where you reject yourself. If you feel ignored, Ask where you ignore yourself. This is not comfortable. It is not glamorous. It is the hard work of individuation. But every honest answer returns a piece of your energy to you. And remember this, projection is not always obvious. Sometimes it hides in subtle patterns. You chase unavailable people because you project your own unavailability. You fear authority because you project your own disowned power. You resent responsibility because you project your own rejected discipline. Every hidden pattern is a contract draining your energy, but once revealed, the contract dissolves. And when the contract dissolves, you are free. Think of how dangerous you become when no one can hook you through projection. The critic cannot wound you. The manipulator cannot use you. The idol cannot enslave you. You become whole, and wholeness is unshakable. Jung said that wholeness is not achieved by cutting off a portion of the self, but by integration. And integration makes you untouchable. Now pause and imagine your life with no leaks, no projections, no unconscious contracts. Your energy sealed, your core intact, your presence radiant. People will notice. Some will be drawn, some will be threatened, some will walk away, but you will stand, steady, calm, unbothered. This is what it means to protect your energy permanently, not by building walls, but by dissolving illusions. And here is the cliffhanger. If projection is the leak, then boundaries are the seal. In the next part, we will explore how Jung's insights on individuation translate into daily practices. The words you say, the silences you keep, the choices you make, that transform awareness into unshakable power. Once you see this, not only will nobody affect your energy again, but your very presence will begin to affect the world. You now understand the shadow and its power, the mask of the persona and its exhausting demands, and the hidden leaks of projection that silently drain your soul. The question remains, what do you do with this knowledge? Awareness is the first step, but if it is not embodied in daily life, it fades into theory. Carl Jung insisted that psychology is not about collecting ideas, but about transformation, a lived alchemy of the self. The path from awareness to freedom is made of choices, of practices, of boundaries, of acts of courage that turn inner clarity into outer power. To protect your energy permanently, you must embody individuation, the process Jung called the journey of becoming whole. Individuation is not about perfection or transcendence. It is about integration. It is the art of bringing shadow and light, persona and self, conscious and unconscious into one unified being. When you individuate, you stop leaking energy into roles, projections and fears. You stop outsourcing your strength to others. You no longer live as fragments but as a center, and from that center you cannot be moved. Let us begin with the most immediate tool, boundaries. Boundaries are not walls to keep people out. They are bridges that define where you end and others begin. They are invisible lines that tell the world, this is my space, my time, my energy. Without boundaries, you are porous, open to every demand, every criticism, every intrusion. With boundaries, you remain open yet intact. But here is the challenge. Boundaries require you to face your shadow, because every time you say no, you must face the part of you that fears rejection. Every time you assert yourself, you must face the part of you that fears being called selfish. Every time you walk away, you must face the part of you that fears abandonment. Boundaries are not only external acts, but inner confrontations with the very wounds that made you vulnerable to energy theft in the first place. Jung would tell you, the act of setting a boundary is not selfishness, but individuation. Because to individuate is to know who you are and who you are not. When you say no, you are not rejecting others. You are affirming yourself. When you refuse manipulation, you are not being cruel. You are being whole. When you protect your time, you are not arrogant. You are conscious of your limited life force. Boundaries are the first defense of energy because they transform awareness into action. The second tool is silence. Jung admired silence because it forces us to face ourselves. Most people cannot tolerate silence. They fill it with chatter, noise, distractions, anything to avoid the confrontation with their own mind. But silence is where individuation begins. It is in silence that the shadow speaks, that the unconscious rises, that projections are revealed. If you can sit in silence, if you can resist the urge to escape yourself, you become unshakable. Because then no critic, no manipulator, no narcissist can disturb you more than you have already disturbed yourself. Silence trains you to remain centered in the storm, to observe without reacting, to conserve energy rather than spill it into chaos. Silence is not emptiness. It is a fortress. The third tool is journaling. Jung himself encouraged active imagination and recording of dreams, symbols, and emotions, because what you write, you own. When you write about your anger, it is no longer a hidden poison. It is a known force you can integrate. When you write about your envy, it becomes a map to your desires. When you write about your fears, they shrink in the light of awareness. Journaling is a daily act of shadow integration. It closes the leaks by naming the unnamed, by facing what you once exiled. With each word, you stitch together the fragments of your psyche. And the fourth tool is conscious choice. Every day, you are faced with thousands of choices, most of them small. But each one is an opportunity to protect or surrender your energy. Do you scroll endlessly, feeding on noise, or do you pause and breathe? Do you say yes out of fear, or do you say no out of strength? Do you speak truth with trembling voice, or do you hide behind silence out of fear? Do you chase approval, or do you stand in your own authority? These small choices, repeated, create an unshakable self. They are not glamorous, but they are the difference between living drained and living radiant. Now imagine this transformation embodied. You walk into the same situations that once drained you, but this time you are different. The critic speaks, and you hear not an enemy but a mirror, and you choose whether the reflection matters. The manipulator plays their game, and you no longer participate. The narcissist demands attention, and you smile, but your energy remains intact. The idol shines, and you admire, but you know the light exists in you too. You have stopped projecting, stopped leaking, stopped living as a mask. You stand whole, centered, radiant. And in this state, something remarkable happens. Your very presence begins to affect others. They sense your stability. They feel your calm. They are unsettled by the fact that they cannot control you, cannot hook you, cannot drain you. Some will be threatened, some will be drawn, but all will recognize something rare. This is why Jung said that the most dangerous thing a person can do is to become themselves. Because authenticity is revolutionary. Wholeness is disruptive. An unshakable soul shakes the very structures of manipulation and control. But with this power comes responsibility. Jung warned that integration is not a path for comfort seekers. When you know your shadow, you can no longer blame others. When you reclaim your energy, you can no longer play the victim. When you individuate, you lose the excuse of unconsciousness. You stand naked before yourself, and from then on, your choices are yours alone. Freedom is heavy, but it is the only weight worth carrying. So let us be clear, this is not a motivational speech. This is not a fantasy. This is the real work of becoming someone who cannot be drained. It is the work of facing your anger, your envy, your fears. It is the work of setting boundaries when your body shakes. It is the work of embracing silence when your mind screams. It is the work of journaling when your hand trembles. It is the work of choosing truth when lies would be easier. But on the other side of this work is a life where nothing and nobody can affect your energy again. And you deserve that life. You deserve to walk into rooms unshaken, to face rejection without collapse, to withstand manipulation without surrender, to shine without apology. You deserve to live whole, radiant, free. Jung's psychology was not about analyzing endlessly. It was about transformation. And the transformation is waiting for you. Pause now and imagine yourself 1 year from today. If you begin this work, who will you be? What relationships will you have released? What power will you have reclaimed? What silence will you have embraced? Picture yourself walking through life, calm, grounded, centered, immune to the harvesters of energy. Picture yourself whole. This is not a dream, this is a decision. So I ask you now, are you ready? Are you ready to stop leaking energy, to stop blaming others, to stop living as fragments? Are you ready to integrate your shadow, to embrace your silence, to set your boundaries, to become whole? If you are, then write it in the comments. I choose awareness. Let the world see your decision. And if this message has resonated with you, subscribe now, because this is not the end, but the beginning. The journey of individuation is long, but you do not walk it alone. Together, we will explore, integrate, and reclaim everything that was once yours. And remember Jung's words, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Fate ends when awareness begins. Energy returns when projection ends. Freedom comes when wholeness is embraced, and when you live from that wholeness, nothing and nobody will ever affect your energy again.